Welcome. All right. So, for those of you who just tuned in via YouTube, we have decided that this gal is too frowny and we need to fix her face. We're going to use something called the puppet warp tool, and it allows us to basically create a mesh on a flat object and kind of treat it like it's a three-dimensional object, almost like clay, and kind of mold it around. In the past, we've had a liquefy tool that allows us to do that. We kind of made lumpy people really, really skinny. In fact, I was looking on the internet just the other day at some photo retouching techniques, and they had befores and afters of celebrities on the covers of magazines. And these are, really attractive people, and it is such a difference. Like, I'm in the industry and I see it all the time, but I would feel bad making that many changes. I'd feel very dishonest, but that's just the name of the game. So we know how to use liquefy. Let's learn how to use this puppet warp tool. The first thing we want to do is just go ahead and kind of zoom in on the area that we want to affect. And in this case, it's her mug and particularly her mouth. So I'm going to get my lasso tool, which is a selection tool, and I'm going to make kind of a loose selection around her mouth area, because this is the part that I want to become a little more animated so I can make her smile. Now, if I really wanted to be pro, I could go in later on and do the same thing, maybe with her eyes and her cheeks, and try to get it all to lift a little bit. She's going to look like she's hard with a smile in this case, but it'll help us learn the technique all the same. Once I have the selection made, I'll probably want to feather it so it's soft. Anytime we do manipulation on photographs, we always want to have things blend and be soft, right? With our skin, with our zits and everything, we're always trying to make it appear like there's this natural gradient and everything soft and lovely. I should say, usually, when we start doing HDR techniques, which I'll show you in a minute, we want everybody ugly and wrinkly. So in this case, I've got her selected. I'm going to go to my select menu, and I have a couple options. I can either modify and feather it, which just means that instead of having a hard line being selected, it would go from being 100% selected and kind of dither its way out, depending on how many pixels I want that radius to be. That's nice and it's super easy, but it just brings up a dialog box like this, and I really don't know how big 50 pixels is in relation to the resolution of this image, so it would be a bit of a shot in the dark. So a more calculated way is if I go into Edit, or let's see, Refine Edge, my bad. Go into Refine Edge. It immediately shows me the part that I have selected, and here I have a slider for feather, and I can take that up or down, and I can see right here where it's getting soft. This Refine Edge is actually quite nice. You can do a lot of other things with it, but I'm going to just leave it at this. So I can see that this is now a nice feathery selection on her face. Do you guys agree, or see something different on your monitors? We okay?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to click all right. And now in order for this puppet warp tool to work properly, I need to take this selected area and put it on its own layer. Anybody have a clue how I could do that? Basically copy her mouth and have it now live on another layer so we can start fooling around with it. Yep, just a copy. So I'm going to use a Command-C, or you could go Edit, Copy, and then I create a new layer, and then Command-V, or Paste. And it will paste that new mouth exactly on top of the old mouth. Okay? If I want to be tricky, I could rename this one Smile. From here, I can go to our Edit menu and go all the way down to something called Puppet Warp. If I click on that, it immediately puts a mesh around her face. Alright? There's an expansion button here. I can go ahead and take this up or down, and this will make the mesh more or less fine. You see that? You can also change the density, I believe, to have more or fewer points. The more points, the more options you have, but sometimes too many options, you start making things crooked. So you have to make a decision there. I'm going to go with normal. Come over here, and I'm going to click some areas that I'd like to basically set a pin. Once I set a pin, I can grab that pin and move it and kind of start to animate her. So I'll go in the corner of her mouth. You see how it dropped a pin there. Drop another one over there. maybe one in the middle, and I can go and select different areas of her mouth to start dropping pins, and maybe even over here. Yes?
How did you get Puppet Warp?
Under Edit menu, so you've got to have her smile isolated on its own layer, and then if you go to Edit, Puppet Warp is right there. Right now I'm already in it, but it would allow me to select that. Once I have this, then I can come in and I can grab these pins and I can start to modify them. And I can pull them out.
How do you grab it?
Just click right on it and pull.
Okay.
Now, if there is not a pin there, then it will create a new pin when you click, right? So there isn't a pin here, so if I click, see a new one showed up? And now I can come in here and I can, oops, I can start to give her a slightly pleasant smile. Let's just pretend that's it. And then I hit return. And now she's kind of smiling. Hey, right? Because it's on its own layer and I have it nice and feathered out, I could actually reposition it a little bit. I give her kind of a weird face, which you may want to do if she has a bad attitude, but chances are where it's at is probably perfectly fine. Okay, and then you would just go ahead and merge those layers together, shift click, and then I usually do a Command E, that's a shortcut, or you can come up here and do merge layers. And now it's the same. So we fixed her face. Puppet Warp, use it wisely. Awesome, so that one is not too difficult.
Can you go back to with the grid, like once you hit enter, can you bring it back that grid up with the same pins and stuff like that?
Once you hit enter, no, it actually just executes it, exactly. So you would have to, if you wanted to like see 2 or 3 different versions, I would first copy her face, put it on 2 or 3 different layers, and then make one dramatic and less dramatic. You can always go backwards, right? You can do an undo, but once you hit return, you basically have set everything the way you wanted to set it, as far as I know. I could, there could be some special other way to do it that I'm not aware of.
And you'd want to do all touch-ups before you did.
Yeah, I would smooth out her skin and everything before I did that, because chances are if she does have blemishes or something, you're going to end up warping them and stretching them, which will make them more difficult to smooth out. Oh, sorry doing this. All right. So now let's go to our Mosaic Colors. This is just, I had some students asking me if there's any other cool background techniques similar to the Euro collage that they could look into. Here's one that's just kind of fun. It actually builds off the regular Euro collage that we've done, and the regular Russian kind of painting that we had done. It ends up looking something like this. So I'll show you quickly how to do that. It's fairly easy. If you remember on the original Russian collage, we go ahead and select our marquee tool, but instead of getting our rectangle or our elliptical, we get a single column that grabs 1 pixel vertically, basically takes a razor blade slice through our image. We find an area of our image that has lots of dynamic color. We select it. And just like earlier today when we were covering up the text on that browser window, we can do a Command T on this layer. Command T can be done on anything that's selected or not selected. Grab the handles and stretch them out, and that gives us these lines. Now this is I'm not getting a lot of great color on this one, so I'm going to go ahead and escape out of it, and I'm going to move it over and grab little homie's face. He might have some more color there, and see if that's any better. A little bit, not awesome, but we'll call it good. Once I get it how I like it, I hit return, and then I deselect it. I can always, because this is on a background layer, if I have to double click it to actually resize it, I can always do another Command T, shrink it up, which will give me a little bit finer lines, and then I could do a Option with my move tool, hold down shift and drag out a couple versions of it. Now I've got 3 layers, merge them together into one. However I want to do this to build some lines. In this case, this is quite a light palette, so I might want to make it darker by going to Image, Adjustments, Levels. Maybe darkening up my mid values a little bit. I can also change the colors by going Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation. We've done this before. I can see what it would be like if I amped it up, pulled it back, or changed the hue around. I don't like any of those. I actually liked it when I just amped it up a little bit. So anytime you're in a palette like this and you don't want to have to cancel and go back to it, if you just want to reset everything to the way the palette was when you opened it, hold down your Option key and you notice how cancel turns to reset. Oh. Click. And that's how it was when we opened it, and I'm just going to take the saturation up a hair. Click OK. So now I've got these lines. To get them in kind of that spacey atmosphere, I'd probably want to create a new document, somewhere to put it. I'll just do this in pixels. I'll go 1400 by 800 at 72 dots in every inch. So there's my space. I'll click a new layer, get black paint, fill it with black. That'll be our background. And then I'll come over to our lines, drag them over. They're really big because that document that we were working on, that picture of the family, was a really high resolution. So I'm going to Apple T or Command T it again. Up here, you know, I'm not seeing any of the handles, right, on this Command T because they're way out in space. So I can kind of scroll around or zoom in and zoom out and try to find them. Or at the very top, if you remember, you have your options. You see it says 100% on the width and the height. I could put like 20% on the width and 20% on the height. Oops. You know what I did? I'm going to chuck this and come back. I'm going to hold down Shift when I drag it over. That way it will be right in the middle. So if I do that 20% width and height again, it won't end up getting small somewhere off to the side.
That was from holding shift.
Yes. So anytime you hold Shift and you drag something, it's either going to line it up to a grid or it's going to put it exactly in the middle. So here I have it now. I'm going to go ahead and hit return. I'm going to say that's good. Then I'm going to Apple T it again and flip it around. Oops. So it goes vertically, and then I'll probably shrink it. It's not a photo, so it doesn't matter if I stretch it. I don't have to hold down Shift. Then here I had some lines, or I had it look on a block like it was descending into space. That's really easy to do. I can just copy this. Again, I could drag the layer down to the new layer icon, or I just like to hold down Shift on whatever, or excuse me, Option on whatever layer I'm on, and Shift to keep it straight, and I copy it. So I have now a new layer with that. Then I Command T it, hold down Option, Command and Shift at the same time. That allows me to use my skewing functionality. This way makes it come forward. This way makes it kind of go off into space. And I can always stretch it about out if I want to a little bit and hit return. You see how those interact with each other right there? Those lines, because they're vertical, go whoop, whoop, right? Or actually just opposite, coming to me. And to give it some dimension, this new one that I just made, if it was going off into space, would it be lighter or darker than the one up in my face? Darker. So to do that, you just go Image, Adjustments, Levels, grab your mid values, and pull them down a little bit. And you see how immediately that creates depth. So awesome, right? Then, on the one that I showed you, it kind of disappeared. So it kind of went and then faded out. You could do that with either putting some black paint on it or simply erasing it or doing a mask. Let's do it the easy way, which is just getting an eraser. Make sure it's a big soft eraser. Come over here and click a couple times. Looks like my opacity set only to 55. I'll put it to 100. Now that's going off into space. I can also I'm going to darken it up a hair more. I think that'll look better. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels again. Pull my mid values down. Click OK. Now if I shift click these, I can either merge them if I don't ever want to pull them back apart again. Or I can click my chain link tool, the link layer tool. If I click that, then they're only temporarily linked. And so now as I move one or resize one, I do the same to the other. So I can take both of these now, hold down my Option key and my Shift key, make a copy of both of them. You notice it made 2 brand new layers for me. Then Apple T that, Command T, flip it around, resize it, reshape it, whatever I want to do with it, and start to make more of these. And then if I want to go ahead and say, you know what, that's awesome, I might want to merge those, just Command E, and I could recolor it. So if I wanted to have different blocks from outer space that are all different colors. And what are some of the ways that I could recolor it? Color overlay. I could do just a simple hue saturation. I could go image adjustments, hue saturation. I could go color balance. Grab some of these and see what happens. These are going to be a little more or a little less dramatic than some of the others, but they will change the overall appearance. So there's lots of different ways now I can do that, and I can have them coming from different angles, look like they're different lengths, and we get kind of this spacey background that kind of has a 1960s flair to it or 1970s flair. Cool? All right. What was my number 3? Let's do retro cross process. This is a dead easy one. This photograph was the best one I could find today for this, but I'm sure it doesn't look the best, but you'll find something better, I'm sure. This is Selena Gomez. You may have heard of her. I hear about her all the time from my 8-year-old daughter. So here's a picture of her. It's a pretty standard looking photo. It doesn't have like a lot of moody treatment to it. It looks like it looks like it was shot the way it was seen. Maybe they touched it up a little bit, but it's not any crazy color or, like I say, theme to it. If we wanted to give it a cross-processed look, which is a look that's a little bit kind of yellow and green, it's popular, I think, in a lot of urban environments, on record albums, and skateboard magazines and things like that. We could go through and adjust all kinds of different things. A lot of times people will adjust the curves, which we haven't talked about in this class, but they're a kind of a more complicated way to adjust our levels through the different color channels that make up your image. So we could try to do all that. We could get online. You can find 100 different ways to create a fake cross process. But one good place to start is to see if there's any actions, anything that somebody else has already created and basically recorded that you could try on your image. Those actions will make changes, and then sometimes you can go back and modify some of those changes and smooth them out if you want. So again, this isn't going to look awesome, but it does give us the idea about actions, and I wanted to make sure you guys know how to load one. We haven't done that before, right?
No.
Okay. If you look in your folder, you should have Retro Effects ATN. That's a little program file that we're going to load into Photoshop. Again, an action is a set of predetermined events that are recorded into Photoshop that you can then use as a process to basically repeat a certain technique or a certain amount of steps that you do over and over and over. And it's all about workflow and efficiency, and it's also about doing cool things that you can share with other people and they don't have to know all the steps that you took to get it to happen. So if you come over here to your menu in Photoshop, and if this menu isn't up here, this is your history, your actions one. You know what, my actions isn't showing up. So you can come over here to Window, if yours is hidden like mine, and find Actions up here at the top. Anytime one of your palettes is missing, or one of the options over here to the right, go to your Window, and you'll find it here. If there's not a check mark next to it, it means it's turned off or it got closed. So there's Actions. There's some default actions that are already loaded into Photoshop. Most of them are not very good. We can create our own, which I'm not going to talk about in this class, but if you want to learn about it, it's not too difficult. You can just go online and do some tutorials. In this case, we're going to load an action, which just means we're going to grab something that somebody else did and chuck it into our preferences so we can use it. I'm going to click on this box over here at the very top, this kind of drop-down menu, and if you come down, you'll see an option called Load Actions. I'll go ahead and click that, and it will say, cool, where do you want it from? In this case, I have it on the my little work drive, so I'm going to find it. It's in folder 10. It was in retro cross process, and there it is. .atn is an action file for Photoshop, so it will allow you to load it. I'm going to hit open, and there it is. And it will forever be in my actions palette as a little file, as long as I don't chuck it or get a new version of Photoshop and forget to mirror it up to this one. So from here, all I have to do is come over to the actions palette and push play. But first I need to select the action item. Sorry, this is the folder. So click the folder, there's the action. You could have multiple effects in the same folder. So one folder might be called Cool Photo Techniques, and it could have cross-processing, HDR toning, skin smoothing, or whatever. So there's just one in here. So click on it, and immediately you can notice that these little buttons at the bottom, I kind of like to think of them as like buttons on a VCR. Just for you guys who don't even know what that is, it's how we used to watch videos. Click on it, and suddenly some things happened, and then it gets you this cross-processed look in Photoshop. Now, if you were to go look at your history, it'll show you there's a bunch of stuff that happened here that we didn't do, that they already made the decisions for. And if you come over here and look at your layers palette, you can see that there were some adjustment layers that came into being by us clicking the action. Those adjustment layers now can be turned off or on, or we can adjust the opacity if the technique is too far one way or the other. Again, the goal of cross-processing is very green and very yellow. I can't tell from here if you guys can see it. Does that kind of look like a familiar technique? Again, this isn't the best photo, but that was reality. That's got a little bit more of a cross-processed look. Cross-processing first started when people were taking film and processing it with different chemicals, chemicals that were meant for other media, and got this funky look and said, that's cool, let's keep doing it. So that's an action. You can buy them, you can find them for free online, they're all over, and they can help you with your workflow. I usually get them thinking they're going to be awesome, and they looked awesome on the sample image that they used, but then they don't always translate, so keep that in mind. All right. I said originally that when we're trying to sweeten photographs, we always want to blend and make people beautiful and stuff, right? And then I said, oops, not when you're doing HDR. HDR photographs are, or HDR is an acronym standing for High Dynamic Range, which means that the goal of an HDR photograph is to capture more than you really see with your eye. So the colors are either way more intense than reality, or sometimes much more dusty and thick. A lot of movies, a lot of modern movies kind of have this HDR look. It's a very cold look, a very gritty, has a lot of texture to it. And the other part of HDR that's super, super important is like crazy detail. Like you're just seeing wrinkles and folds and pores, and it's just really gnarly. It's great for people, certain types of people. You don't want to shoot a beautiful model in HDR, because unless you're going back and trying to composite and have the model look pretty, but the background look all chewed up. But it's great for landscapes. It's great for architecture, things that I see a lot of motorcycles and cars and things shot this way. It looks very cool. Also super great for dun, 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 homeless guys. So you've seen these pictures before. I know you have. They're either black and white or in color, and they got these dudes on the street, and you always are like, man, their face is just leathery, crazy. You can see all the little scratches and pores, and it's real moody, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, so many photographers go out and take pictures of homeless people, and then they say it's like super artsy and hang it up in a museum, right? Am I just the only one seeing these? Okay, so I searched for homeless people on Google today, and a couple came up. There's that one, and then there's this guy here. He was too happy, so I decided let's go with the dude with a little more attitude. I kind of felt bad, though, because I'm like, you know what? Maybe they haven't had their good lot in life, and now we're going to make them look even worse. But for the sake of art, I'm willing to take that step for you guys, so I hope you feel good about yourselves. Open it in Photoshop, and you end up with something like this. Now, HDR, compositing, HDR photos, HDR toning, again, it's like cross-processing. There are a million ways to do it, and there isn't one right or wrong way. I just want to show you one way and see if you guys like it. If you don't, go find another way online. One problem with HDR toning is a lot of times when people go in and start to do a lot of sharpening to bring out that crazy detail, they're able to bring it out. They're able to make things darker and lighter and having contrast, which makes the appearance of resolution or of sharpness. But in doing so, it brightens and darkens colors instead of just lightening whites and darkening blacks. Does that make sense? So if I was to take an amplifier and put it on this guy's hair right here, and I want more white to show and more dark color, it would show a lot more bright yellow for a while and a lot more dark brown, unless I took it to an extreme and almost made it black and white. And even though that would show us more detail, it would kind of give it a different flavor or mood. It would look really poppy and saturated, almost like that cross-process picture, which we don't want. Usually HDR images are a little more moody. So there's a way that we can sharpen dramatically our highlights and shadows without affecting the color that's underneath them. Now, I've showed you how to do a high-pass filter. You guys remember that a while ago? This is another similar technique, but it gives you a little more dramatic and controllable result. So you have to follow me with this. It's just a couple steps, but you don't want to get lost. The first one is go to Image, go to your mode, and we're always using RGB and CMYK. We're going to jump into a mode for just 10 seconds called Lab Color. If you click Lab Color, your image is going to appear the exact same. I don't want to go into a big explanation about what Lab Color is, but in this case, what it is helpful. From here, you're going to jump over into your Channels menu. If you click on that tab, you're going to see channels. Now, if we were RGB, we'd have red, green, and blue channels. CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta, and black channels. Remember when we went to the printing press and they stripped out all the different colors and put them on plates? Those colors represented those channels. The combination of the channels together as a composite equates to the illusion of a full color image. But if we were to pull out all the cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, they'd all live on their own space, right? We kind of saw that on the drum. So Lab is treated a little different. We have a channel called Lightness. If you click it, it basically turns our image temporarily to black and white. And this channel only affects the black and white part of the image. So when we go ahead and sharpen this channel, it's only messing with that part of it. So, because I'm super duper smart, I thought, I'm going to go into my filter, go down to my sharpen filter, and hit my unsharp mask. And this is where I'm going to start to like amp it up. So I'll put my amount to like 100 and my radius up real high. And you see how much deeper and darker, and now you're getting all this action in here on his beard, right? Than where we were before. Pretty dramatic difference, right? And I could try it even more. I could pull it back down. That was probably too much. I'm seeing, I was losing a lot of hair. I'm seeing still a lot over here, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, if I'd done this just with just a regular unsharp mask in RGB mode, he would have got sharpened, but all the colors would have went funky. Because we would have basically brightened all the really light colors and darkened all the really dark colors, and it kind of started going rainbow on us. So, because I'm in lab mode, now I can click back to lab here, and it has only affected the resolution, or excuse me, the sharpness of the blacks and whites, and hasn't screwed up our color at all. I mean, that's cool. So this is where we were. Same exact color palette, right? Here's where we are. It's just tightened everything up and given it a grit. Now I can go Image, Mode, RGB Color, get back to where we're used to working, get in my Layers palette, and then I can start to make some more adjustments. So I could go in and say, All right, what happens if I click on my little cookie and adjust the levels? This is a temporary change. It's just on the layer. And I was to lighten up things a little bit in the background. Maybe darken up him a hair. Okay, what if I was to cool it down a little bit? This is something we haven't used before, but if you click on the little cookie, sometimes with HDR, it's nice to go into your photo filter option. There's a bunch of things here. And let's try, I like this cooling filter 80. And you see how he's kind of cooled off a little bit. I can make this more or less intense. So he's getting really cool there. Now it's like homeless dude in the winter. Whereas before we were homeless dude in the summer. I'm just going to cool him off just a hair. And then last on this one, I'm going to just create my own layer on top. Actually, I'm going to copy him again. Put him on top of everything. So there's the original without the cooling or anything. I'm going to do image adjustments, hue saturation. I'm going to amp it up a ton. Sunburned homeless guy, right? But I'm getting some really cool colors out here. Click OK, and if you remember, I can click my mask tool or just get an eraser. If I click a mask, I get a brush. If not, I use an eraser. Get it to a manageable size. And now I'm just erasing out the mask, and I'm revealing him underneath. So I'm doing a compositing technique, right? Basically cutting a hole in this layer. Then I can adjust the opacity or do whatever I'd like with it to give it, you know, something that looks more natural. But that's something that in life probably could not be shot, right? You see like how vivid the background is. You see it. You'd have to get some serious light on his face to get all that detail and get it all junky. This is a pretty low resolution image, and so is the TV, so you're seeing some pixelization, but you can get this so it looks razor sharp. And that's definitely a much cooler, to me, picture than that one, right? That one I'm like, okay, don't grab my wallet, I'm running. This one I'm like, we gotta hang out, because, yeah, you're kind of like a superhero.
He's like beyond hipster.
Yeah, beyond hipster. So cool. I like it. I don't know if you do. If you don't have to use it. So that's HDRing. I've given you another folder called Miscellaneous with a new montage technique you can check out. This is an old video I did, so it's an old version of Photoshop, but it works. You can open this up, and it shows you how to take a same picture and create kind of a montage using just shadows. You can tell, like, look at the apple at the top. It's like the old rainbow one. I wish I would have bought stock at that point in Apple. There's also this neon glow, which is just a very, very simple layer effect or layer style that you can copy and paste like we did with the brass or the, what was it, gold or whatever last week. Remember that? And then I want to show you one other thing because I think this is cool. It's a stitching technique. I'll try to go through this just because we're running short on time. I'll try to go through it slowly and methodically so we don't have to ask questions, if that's all right. But let's pretend I'm designing a hat for Utah State, and I want to take an A and have it be blue and outline it with white, what looks like stitching thread. That could be very tough to do in Photoshop. The reason being is stitching is going to be all these little lines concentric or next to each other. Sometimes they have slight variation, sometimes a little bit of a gap, right? Think of something that's embroidered. Also, those lines, I'll draw over here on the board. Here's my Aggie A. As these lines come around the corner, the machine turns, right? Whereas traditionally when we work with a brush in Photoshop, it goes like this. Right? And so you would lose all that on the sides, right? So I want to just show you how to build a simple brush that will respect and follow a direction that way. Just in case you ever get a project like this, because I've had one and I did not know how to do it. So I'm just going to set up an object and give it a go. The first thing I'm going to do is create a brush. We've done that before when we gave that guy facial hair. I'm just going to get a hard kind of a regular paintbrush or marker, and I'm going to make a simple V. I'll get my my rectangle selection tool, put it around it, edit, define brush preset, and I'm going to call this stitch. Click OK. Don't need it anymore, so I'm going to hit, oops. I'm just going to go ahead and get my eraser tool and erase it out. Then I'm going to go into my type tool, or if I was doing this for the Aggies, I'd probably already have the big A saved somewhere. But we have big font. We don't have the one that I thought would work, so let's go Cooper, old school Aggie. Make it really big. All right. What I would do now is change this to, instead of type, let's actually make it blue. What's Aggie blue now? Somewhere here, let's pretend. And I'll put this on a background color so we can see white stitching around it. Just for this technique, we will put it on a gray background. All right, so I need to convert my A into a work path or a shape. If I come over here and I hold down my control key anywhere on the layer and click it and do convert to shape, you notice it's no longer type, we have a shape there, and if I come to my path palette, I have a shape of the A. Okay? That's really important. I'm going to let that sit for a second, and I'm going to jump back to my paintbrush. Click on my paintbrush. I'm going to go find that one that I just made, the V, which we called stitch. And then I'm going to come over to my paintbrush editor, which we learned about last time, maybe. Where'd it go? There. You can click here as well. And I'm going to change some of the specs. So the spacing, I want to space it out just a hair more, because again, these are stitches. Oops. Then I'm going to go to my shape dynamics. And the size jitter, I'm just going to barely change, just because these stitches won't actually all be perfect. I want to make it look a little messed up to make it look real. The angle, like maybe 1%, maybe. And I could maybe turn that off. But here's where the magic is. When you go to the control, you want to go to direction. If you leave this on off, it will do just like I showed you on this side. It will not wrap around the corners. But if you change the control to direction, then when I actually start to use this, it will follow the edges. So if I was lazy, I could get a white paintbrush, come over here on a new layer. I've got my V. I'm going to make it a little smaller. And I could start to draw, and you see how it's respecting that? How cool am I, right?
That's so cool.
I know. Now, if you didn't want those little gaps, of course, you could go in and tighten it up. So that's how I could do it manually, which isn't too bad. And with stitching, you know, it's good to kind of be a little bit off. These are way too big of stitches, but that's one way to do it. Another way is I can click a new layer and go ahead, and I'm going to choose a little smaller size and let Photoshop do it. And that's by clicking to my paths. Excuse me, I need to click on the A first so that path is selected right here. Coming over here, let's see, I think I have to name this, if I remember right. Let me copy it just in case. Oops. There we go. So it's not a vector mask anymore, it's an actual path. So you just copy it. Then I can come here and I can do, no. Let me think, did I do that the wrong way? Does it help if I change it to a clipping path? Oh. Have I screwed it all up? Let me try this. I need to make it a work path. Well, I can't remember how to make it a work path, but this will work as well. So I could just hold down my command key and make a selection of it like this. Then click a new layer, and then go image, edit, and then find stroke. We've done that before. We determine, oh, you know what? The stroke won't work with the, I lie, it won't work with the brush. I have been perplexed here. Well, here's one thing we can do, I know. Or I think I know. I can put another A there. So if we had intended to do this right from the beginning without hand outlining it, I can create an A. Let's make it blue. Oops. Make it blue. Then I think from here, when it's type, I can create work path. There it is. So instead of converting it to shape, I should have just created the work path. That's where I went wrong, I believe. Come over here to my paths menu. See how it says work path right here? It should, if I control click it, or maybe, oh, maybe is it here? Why won't it let me stroke the path? This is embarrassing. Let me just give it a name. DFG. Well, it doesn't. It only works if you outline it with the other paintbrush. I need to figure this out. During the break, I will figure this out. But you can get it so that it will actually stroke the path with. Maybe I need the path selected. No. Why isn't that working? Well, let me figure it out once we end, and then I'll yell at everybody and tell you how to do it, because I don't want to waste this video. And it's awesome that the last video for this class I'm going to screw up at the end and not be able to finish. You know what? I'm pausing. Well,
Oh, please don't pause.
I have it written down somewhere.
Can you not pause because I'll take you forward?
Yes, I won't pause, but I almost did out of anger. You guys want to sing like a song, kind of like you're in the waiting room? That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Just kidding. It's really not necessary. I printed it out because I thought, you know what? If I forget it, it would be embarrassing.
That seemed easy. I just did something here.
And it worked?
I just laid down a text layer and then right clicked on the text layer itself and it let me make it a work path.
But then so I did that and I had the work path, but then it wouldn't stroke the work path over here.
Oh, yeah.
There. I did it the right way, it says here. What? I know it'll work if I just do this. Yeah, right.
Turn into a smart object first? Or raster?
I shouldn't. Man, this is weird. Well, I will email it to you guys once I figure it out. I did it right before this class, and that's exactly how I did it, and it worked. And that's how my sheet says I'm supposed to do it.
Make an action.
I will make an action and present it to you. Anyways, you probably won't ever do this technique, so it's kind of specialized. But if you do, you can always, by hand, use that wonderful brush, which actually did work, and outline something and make it look like it is stitched. And there's other uses for this other than embroidery, but I thought this was pretty cool. So I will take any other questions that you guys have, and then, and then we will call it good, and I will give you your final. Other questions, concerns? Awesome. Well, there's a few random techniques for you. Hopefully they help you do other great things. You have this miscellaneous folder with a couple others that we haven't done in class. And let's talk about your final. Oh, yes.
Sorry, where'd you put the miscellaneous folder?
Do you not have it? I have it. Let me send it to you. I'm sorry. I thought it was on there. All right, should be on its way. Excellent. Now, do you want me to keep the video going for the final thing? Is that helpful? Well, everybody seems to think so, so I'll do that. Here's your final assignment. What I'd like you guys to do is to pick a project of your choice. This will be your capstone project for the class. You have a couple weeks to do it, so hopefully it gives you plenty of time. It's going to be worth 60 points. Our assignments up to this point have been worth 30. So if you're good, really good at math, you might think the amount of time or work or effort that goes into this should be about double the other assignments that you've done. I want this to be something that's meaningful for you. So if you have other class work, you have to create a portfolio, or you're working on a website or whatever for other classes, this would be a great one to co-op with that, because then you can kind of get a 2-for-1. If you have interest in music and you're creating a band and you want to make a full CD with the jacket and the jewel case, if you want to make a poster showing, the stages of a butterfly's life, I don't know. But whatever appeals to you and involves using Photoshop, layout, and design, I want you to pursue. And hopefully because it's meaningful to you, you love it, and you give it more time and attention than you normally would. I'm going to have you bring those to class. It'll be due between 6 and 6:30 on the 25th. So that will be not this Wednesday, but the next. And then at that point, I will have the grade sheet that has all of your assignments recorded to date. Don't forget, if you're missing assignments, you need to bring them that day, and you'll be able to get half credit for them. If you don't, you'll get no credit, and that makes a big, big difference on your grade, and I don't want anybody to be upset about that. So please bring those late assignments. Please bring your final by 6:30 p.m. Realize that I probably won't be able to get your final back to you, so don't give me anything that's super, that you can't part with. And don't give me anything that's overly three-dimensional. I had I had some picture frames in my car for like 3 months because a student he gave me these huge frames and stuff, and he wanted them back. And I said, I usually don't do it, but I'll let you get them back. And he never came back for them, so the other day I just threw them away. I don't want to do that. I feel bad about it, and I don't want to walk to my car after this class with all this stuff. So try to make it manageable. It can be oversized if you like, and if that's part of the theme, cool. But keep in mind I got to cart it around. Is that clear? I'm gonna say sayonara on this video. So bye bye.